The Knicks had a rough opening night against the Boston Celtics, 132-109 loss. But on the bright side, the Celtics didn't set the NBA record for threes made. They only tied it. So we're going to talk about a tough night, including some silver linings in today's episode.
You are Locked On Knicks, your daily New York Knicks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
All right, welcome in to Locked On Knicks. Today's episode is brought to you by Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. And I want to thank you guys for making Locked On Knicks first listen today and every day, whether you're checking us out on your favorite podcast platform or taking in the sights and sounds on YouTube. We appreciate you making us part of your daily routine. Make sure you hit that auto download function on your favorite podcast app or the notification bell on YouTube so you never miss an episode. I'm Alex Wolf. I'm editor-in-chief of Knicks site The Strickland, which you can find at thestrick.land. And he's Gavin Shaw, your favorite play-by-play broadcaster, favorite play-by-play broadcaster. And Gavin, unfortunately, everybody's favorite team had a rough night. 132-109, the loss to the Celtics. And I'm going to be honest, that final score makes it look better than it was. It was just an absolute drubbing. By the time all was said and done, the Celtics shot 47.5% from three and made 29 of 61 attempts. However, that was the number after they missed something like 13 or 14 straight to end the game when they cleared their bench and threw all their bench guys out there, and all those guys, all the Xavier Tillmans and Sam Hausers and Peyton Pritchards of the world were all Jordan Walsh threw a real nice UFO. I mean, just all the end of bench guys were just hucking threes, trying to be the one that made the NBA record. And then the Celtics did not set a new NBA record. They merely tied it for the most threes in a single game. So small victories, I guess. But yeah, pretty tough game for the Knicks. Although, I mean, there were some things to be encouraged by, but unfortunately we can't start there. There's a lot of things to be discouraged by in this first game. And I think thing one is just that this defense does not look ready to compete at a super high level yet. And that could mean, I mean, we talked about this during our schedule breakdown and stuff, like that can mean a pretty tough start to the season, because they have a bit of a murderer's row here to begin the season before hitting sort of the easy parts in a few weeks. So things might get a little uglier before they get better for the Knicks, unfortunately.
So let's start with some good news about the defense, right? Setting a record for threes made in a game is inherently an anomaly, because there's been thousands upon thousands of NBA games. There have been a lot of incredibly good shooting teams. There have been defenses, hundreds of them, that are dramatically worse than this Knicks defense is going to end up being. And none of them have allowed this many threes, except for one, in those thousands and thousands of games. So let's start with that. No matter how bad it was, this was out of the blue. The Knicks actually scored the basketball really well. You wouldn't know it because they were down by 30 the whole game is the way the Celtics shot, but the Knicks finished shooting 55% from the field, 37% from three if you round up. I'd choose to round up, 75% at the line. They got ran by a team that was historically great last year and looks to be in championship form already. So as painful as it is, tip of the hat to the Boston Celtics. I've said it all summer. It would be an embarrassment if they don't repeat as NBA champions. I saw nothing tonight to push me off that mark, especially with Jason Tatum clearly pissed off. Now for the stuff that the Knicks could control. It is clearly going to be a very different experience with Karl-Anthony Towns than we had with Isaiah Hartenstein and Mitchell Robinson the last few years. The activity level, the defensive IQ, the foot speed is just not there. Tom Thibodeau started off this game trying to use him how he's basically used every Knicks big 80% of the time over his entire tenure in a shallow drop, and the Celtics just kind of scoffed at that and said, all right, we're going to torch that. Part of the issue was Mikal Bridges, who was part of the appeal of getting him is that he is supposed to be one of the best screen navigators in the NBA. That is a skill that fell off in his time on the Nets relative to his time in the Suns. He was not getting around it through screens. And just in general, the whole premise of getting Mikal Bridges and OG Anunoby on the same team is that when you play a team like the Boston Celtics with two of the best wings on planet Earth, you don't have to get into rotations. You don't have to double the ball. You can stay home. You can let those guys defend. You can live with mistakes, and hopefully you're going to limit the Drew Holidays, the Derek Whites, the Al Horfords. Partially because of that aforementioned screen navigation, partially because Cat was kind of all over the place, partially because Jalen Brunson was a target. That didn't work tonight. The Knicks were constantly in rotation, constantly behind the ball. You had Cat trying to recover 20, 30 feet across the court, racing out to the corner, and they were just not fast enough to get there. Even when the defense was solid, I don't want to say good because outside of OG Anunoby, it was rarely good. Boston still made shots. Jason Tatum, I said it was just on a all-time heater, but I was disappointed and we'll get into Mikal Bridges' offense, but just his ability to affect the ball, Alex, the best defenders in the NBA dictate action, right? They're in your chest. They're altering you from your plan of attack. He didn't do that. Tatum got wherever he wanted. He got whatever he wanted, and it made a difference when Tom Thibodeau belatedly switched Anunoby onto Tatum, but at that point, it was too late. The Celtics were too good. I'll let you talk about it, but it was just a really disappointing night. And we saw a lot of this in the preseason. We got a million comments saying, hey, stop talking about it. It's the preseason. It's going to work in the regular season. It doesn't just work like that, right? There's a reason Tom Thibodeau treats the preseason so religiously. It's hard to flip a switch against a team that's this good. The Knicks couldn't do it. They were sloppy. They were all over the place, and Boston killed them.
Yeah, the worst part is, I think, is that the fact that they came out looking so preseason-like early on, and I think that allowed the Celtics to get as hot as they did. And, so that's got to be a lesson learned too. I mean, this team is not, especially against one of the best teams in the league, is not going to be able to just be like, oh, we got this. We have enough talent. We can lock in later, whatever. Like they came out and they were lackadaisical. They were not rotating. They were not sticking to their men. They just seem to have no clue. I mean, this is also though, sort of what I expected. If I'm being completely honest, in my heart of hearts, I wanted them to win this game, but you're going up against a well-oiled machine that is the exact same team that won damn near 70 games last year and won an NBA championship, versus a team that has been sort of put together on the fly over the last 2 weeks, just lost, have lost multiple guys that they thought were going to be in the rotation. No Mitchell Robinson, just lost Precious Achiuwa, which we haven't gotten to talk about on this show yet, but like he's going to be out like a month, if not, or roughly 2 weeks to a month now at this point, which is a huge blow to this team because he had a phenomenal preseason. You want to talk about guys that really showed out in preseason and looked like they're ready to take over the world this year. Precious was looking great. And then also lose Landry Shamet, who is going to be, sort of a stop the bleeding type shooter off the bench. And, they lose three of those guys. In addition to the fact they're trying to build a new defense around Karl-Anthony Towns while they wait on Mitchell Robinson and even Precious Achiuwa to come back. The fact that you had to give Jericho Sims minutes as your first man off the bench in the first quarter against the defending NBA champions. And then, Pacom Dadier is getting, real somewhat high leverage minutes, in the second quarter, which I actually campaigned for the other day. So I guess I'm sort of glad to see that they're giving him a shot, given the injury situation and everything. But it's tough. I think that it basically is just, if they're going to win with the crew that they have right now, they're going to have to just be like all out, pedal to the metal all the time, every single game. You can't come out and not be totally there in any given game. And they just, to your point, didn't really look like they were totally there. Like Bridges just was not locked in. Even on offense, it seemed like there was just a little too much, I don't even want to call it your turn, my turn. It was just like weird decisions on who to try to get involved. Like you have Jericho Sims check in the first, I don't want to crap on Sims, but he's a clear misfit in this grouping of championship caliber teams, or teams that hope to be championship caliber. Out there in the first quarter, and the first thing you do after you get him in is run a play for him and throw him the ball underneath with no real plan. And he's just kind of and fumbled the ball and lost it. And it's why were you looking to get him involved on offense in your first play, having him in the game? Just have him out there for defense and rebounding. Let him get offensive boards. Have your shooters shoot the ball. Don't be running plays for Jericho Sims early on this game. You have all this offensive talent that you spent all this time and energy and picks and trades on during this offseason. Use them. So yeah, it was kind of a bizarre land game for me. I hope they're able to just kind of shake it off, but again, not to raise any alarms or anything, but if they keep playing like this, it's going to be a pretty ugly start to the season, I think, because things really just are not getting any easier over the course of the next couple weeks here.
Yeah, I think my biggest concern that's going to linger a little bit here is just their ability to make other teams feel them. They were the team in the NBA to be able to do that. Like think about the last time they played the Celtics, and obviously it was a less motivated Boston team with the 1 seed cinched up to end the year, not on ring night, different setting, different team, but the Knicks just bullied them, right? Offensive rebound after offensive rebound, like in their chest defensively. And that's where it's something I've been trying to get at. I don't always know the right way to phrase it, but when I had Jonathan Macri on, when I've had Jeff on, like losing DiVincenzo, losing Hartenstein, not having Precious. I think he's someone who's really good at that. Like you just lose a certain level of like physicality and like just like authoritativeness and like attentiveness and intensity. That was missing tonight in a real, like even just competitive spirit. Like it was missing. Like they didn't seem to give a crap at times. Like no one was getting pissed. And like Jalen like has that in his own game where he will like go and get a bucket when the team is really struggling and he's ultra tough. Josh has his own ways of bringing that to the table, but I didn't see that from Mikal, who I should, because like the guy's been a killer at different points. And he's played for a team that's made the finals. Like I really didn't see that from OG for like all the crap Mikal took. Like he ended up having a worse night than Mikal did offensively. He was 1 for 7 for 4 points with 3 fouls, whatever. Like he sucked. And like, yeah, it's game one. And again, I really think Precious is going to help a lot. And I think we're going to see a shocking amount of Precious Achiuwa minutes. Like I wouldn't be surprised if he was starting, because like, I think that might be the most like tolerable way to help Towns, even if you have to sacrifice some offense. Deuce wasn't really it defensively. Like he was randomly doubling off of Peyton Pritchard. That was how Pritchard got his only 3 of the night. It was a carryover from the preseason, and that it was not what Knicks basketball has been under Tom Thibodeau. And that, like, if I were to just sum it up, like more than like knowing the scheme, because like I think they're going to get there and they're going to learn the rotations and they're going to develop chemistry. Like that toughness just has to be there. And you saw a lot of toughness. Even Julius Randle like walk out that door, and they have to find it now with a new group.
Yeah, I will just say before we move on to some more positive things, highlight some of the good that came out of this game. Jalen Brunson and Deuce McBride both, I think, had phenomenal games, even for Brunson sort of struggling a little bit from time to time. Like all in all, it looked pretty easy for him. The one thing I'll say just in regard to the defense, we've said similar things about the same, not the same squad, obviously. They didn't have the same people, but these Tibbs coached Knicks teams never seem to come out with their best foot forward on defense, even when they have some continuity. Like 2 years ago, Brunson's first year, things just looked really ugly at first. They sort of righted the ship. They figured it out. Last year, especially after, like, Mitch came out and looked really good and was anchoring a pretty good defense. And then he goes down. First, like 6 games with Hartenstein, the Knicks are giving up the highest offensive rating to opposing teams in the NBA over the course of that stretch. And it was like ugly. It was like 130 or something like that. So, I mean, this team always sort of struggles before they figure it out and get better. So I think at this point, reserving some judgment on this, is smart as far as like trusting in Tibbs and hoping that he figures it out and everything else. But, as we said during the preseason and everything else, like when people, again, you mentioned like people in YouTube comments and whatever being like, oh, it's just preseason. Why are you guys flipping out about it? It's like, we can only talk about what we saw. What we saw today was pretty pathetic on defense. So unfortunately, that's the angle that we have to attack it from. But, I do want to talk about positives because, we got to find them where we can in this game. I think Deuce McBride and Jalen Brunson had really good games. So in just a sec, we'll chat about that and then maybe get back into some of the more concerning things again to end the show. But first, I want to let you all know about our friends over at FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of a game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. And you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. That's so easy. I was just in Vegas over the weekend for a concert. I had to work so much harder to win any money in a casino. You're telling me that you could place $5, you get $200 for free? Well, I'll tell you the team I wouldn't place it on right now while we're being negative. The Texans are somehow not favored at the Jets this weekend. And like, I know the Texans aren't exactly perfect, but the Jets are minus 1.5 point favorites in this game, apparently, according to FanDuel. And I wouldn't bet that. Are you kidding me? No, like I wouldn't bet that. I wouldn't bet the Knicks championship odds at this particular moment. Like, I don't know. I'm not saying bet against the Knicks, but definitely bet against the Jets in this game. I don't understand where these odds are coming from. So go ahead and do that with your $5. And if it doesn't work, you get $200 back again, because you get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. So where can you do that? One more time, it's at FanDuel.com. All right, Gavin, we're back in to keep talking through this Knicks loss. I won't say the final score again because it was a little painful. But let's talk about the two guys that tied for the leading score in this game. Deuce McBride and Jalen Brunson both pour in 22 points in this one. Actually, both have 2 assists as well. That's kind of funny. Well, okay, that's where the similarities end. I guess they didn't shoot the same. But Brunson, 9 of 14 overall, 1 of 2 from 3, 3 of 3 from the free throw line. Deuce McBride, 8 of 10 from the field, 4 of 5 from 3, 2 of 3 from the free throw line. I probably want to start with Deuce. He came in and was such a presence in this game. Like, from the second that he got in, you want to talk about a guy that took preseason personally and went out there and like really was like, I need to set the tone. That was Deuce McBride. Like, he was the preseason warrior this year, and it's paying off. Like, he came out gunning in preseason, and now he's coming out gunning in the regular season and looking great doing it. I mean, he looks so confident. Everything he's doing is money right now. The 3-point shot is just like butter. Like, I feel so confident when he rises up that thing is going to go in. He pulled up for a midi, I think, at one point in this game, got inside a little bit, like just did a little bit of everything off the bench there. And if we want to talk about like a really, you know what? If you can find it, I didn't look up the odds ahead of time. If you want to bet one thing on the Knicks after this one game, bet Deuce McBride for 6th man of the year, because whatever the odds are, it's probably a steal, because like, I think that he looks like he's primed to potentially go after that award this year. Like, he's a totally different player. He looks exactly like he did in the postseason. And it's honestly very reminiscent of when Jalen Brunson had that great postseason for Dallas and then signs the deal with New York, and us and everybody else are going, well, can he still do that? Next regular season, is he going to still look that good? And then Brunson came out and looked that good. A lot of people have drawn similarities between those two as far as how they developed so far in their careers, and how Deuce is sort of on that sort of Brunson trajectory of like getting a little bit better every single year and improving his 3-point shooting and everything else. I'm starting to feel really good about Deuce. Like, I think that the Knicks have themselves someone that we're probably going to look at by the time of the end of this year, provided he's still on the team, and say like, the Knicks have one of the most valuable contracts in the entire NBA, with this guy making like $3 billion for the next 3 years.
Yeah, look, I tweeted out, if there's one silver lining of today's game, the Knicks have 2 of maybe the 5 best contracts in basketball in their backcourt. Like, it is wild how good he is. Again, if I'm Deuce, I hate to call for anyone to be fired. If I'm Deuce McBride, I'm probably firing my agent. I hate to say that, but what the hell? Like, how do you sign that knowing this guy? Well, maybe not knowing who's going to be this good, but like the potential to be this good. Obviously, Deuce probably prioritizes security. And I am sure the Knicks, to the best of their ability, will make it right with him next time around, because my God, I hesitate to say someone is being robbed when they're making pre-taxes $13 million over 4 years, but Deuce McBride is being robbed. He was the Knicks' best player tonight. I think that's I'm not even going to say this side of Jalen Brunson. I'm just going to say it. Like, Deuce McBride was pretty clearly the Knicks' best player tonight. The shot making was exceptional. He ended up missing the free throw, but felt like in the moment, like a huge 4-point play to stem the tide when the Knicks were already down 32-17. Going right at Drew Holiday, like hit a step back 3 in Drew Holiday's eye. Like, the confidence is just ridiculous. Like, was hitting middies. We mentioned that was something that was not a big part of his game, either in terms of accuracy or volume last year. He was cooking in the preseason, still cooking from there. I want to continue to see more at the rim from him, more creativity at the rim. But you know what, Alex, like we said it at the time of the trade, like this is probably part of the reason the Knicks were ultimately comfortable trading Dante DiVincenzo, because they have a guy in Deuce who can bring a lot of the same stuff to the table. I never thought I'd say this. My question right now is more so if he can replicate Dante's defense, and obviously on the ball, like he has the talent to be better than Dante ever was. I'm talking more in terms about like off ball, like flying around, blocking shots, rebounding is something that's going to determine his time. But you know what? There's a world where the Knicks simply need the offense, and he's the guy over Josh Hart or maybe even over one of Mikal or OG, who's like out there to end some games because he was their best offensive player tonight. I'm curious to see how sustainable it was. As far as Jalen Brunson goes, I think the thing that stood out early was what we've talked about all summer and what Jeremy Cohen made his bold prediction about, and that was Jalen's ability to get all the way to the rim with Karl-Anthony Towns in the game. And even against the defense, as good as the Celtics, they were throwing everything at him. Like Drew Holiday was on him, Derek White was on him, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, like Brunson over and over and over again early in this game, got to the basket. Boston was doing everything possible to beat him up. Like Horford basically body checked him and Brunson didn't get a call. Like over and over again, he was getting hit at the rim and didn't really get calls. I was impressed with the Celtics' ability to just like pressure him with length. And if there's something to watch for Jalen, I'm not going to call it a concern because he's just too good to call it a concern. But there were moments where I was getting flashbacks to Jeremy Lin against the Heat where LeBron and D Wade basically single-handedly ended Linsanity, where Jaylen Brown forced an 8-second violation. And after he got by Tatum just sort of reached around and knocked it away. Like it felt like it was Boston's goal to be like, all right, anyone but Jalen is going to beat us. But again, like if you're looking for a bright side, like it's a testament to how good the Knicks offense could be that like with Boston playing that way, Jalen was as efficient as he was. The one thing I'll note, 2 assists, 4 turnovers. That needs to be better. I know part of it was missed shots, but Jalen is just going to have to play like a little bit more pass first than he normally does to get Mikal going, to get OG going, to get Cat going. Like it's on him to be a point guard early this year and not just a pure scorer he was in the second half of last season.
Yeah, in particular, when you talk about that, like, I think it's got to be to get someone like OG going. Like I just felt like, I mean, this may be, I'll just use this as a springboard for the next segment, I guess. But, I feel like that's one of my big criticisms for how the Knicks ran the offense in this one, is that it was just a little too much of like tasking guys with creating their own offense. And I feel like the whole point of getting this team together that you have is to have guys that can complement each other, and they're all talented passers. They're all talented shooters. Everything else, like everybody should just be moving around trying to find their spots. But again, this is a team that was only assembled 2 weeks ago, or like slightly more than 2 weeks ago. I don't know. I forget. Time is a flat circle. It's been a long couple weeks, but like it doesn't matter. Like I feel like they weren't making enough of an effort to do that in this game. And Brunson, to his credit, I think, much like he has been in the past, was sort of tasked with being singular at too many moments in this game. And that's fine sometimes. And, he did really well with it. And to your point too, like he definitely had a lot of room to operate in the middle. And that's why we saw him, early on in this game. I think he made his first 6 shots, maybe even 7. It was a lot of shots in a row that he made to start this one off. And, a lot of that was just getting inside and getting all the way to the rim, finishing there with minimal opposition there because the big was drawn out. So we can look forward to more of that. Just hopefully there's a little more intentionality with how the Knicks run this thing and start trying to get guys into spots where, they can tilt the defense, much like what the Celtics did to the Knicks. Like, and I mean, again, that's well-oiled machine versus team that's still figuring it out. Like the Celtics know exactly where every single person is going to be on the floor at any given time. And it showed because they had the Knicks just running for their lives all night on defense, trying to get out to the open shooter and getting there 2 seconds late. And then the Celtics getting so hot that once they did finally figure it out a little bit and get a hand up in their face, it didn't matter. Like none of them were going to miss a shot at that point because they were all way too in rhythm. So, not fantastic. But Brunson scoring wise, very little to worry about there. And I will say too, maybe we can keep the positive train rolling in the next segment. One guy that we were sort of sounding alarms on in the preseason and in the bold predictions. I know that you had, a pretty macabre prediction about what could work or what or not work with him with his shot. But Mikal Bridges, I think we saw in real time figure it out in this game, which was good. Something just clicked while he was playing, and suddenly the shot looked less hitchy. He looked more comfortable. He looked real bad in like the first quarter, and going towards. Actually, I think did he score all of his points in the second half?
I think he did.
I think so. I mean, he looked bad in the first half. He did not, and then came out and looked like a totally different player. So let's talk about Mikal Bridges in just a sec, and then we can get into some of the more concerning things and some of the weird rotations and stuff like that.
All right, guys, I want to tell you about our good friends over at Gametime. I'm as excited as I am about the NBA being back. I'm nearly equally excited about the NHL being back. There's nothing like the sensory overload you get at a hockey game. There's just a special feeling I get every time I walk into arena and just feel how cold it is in there. Hopefully you get good enough seats to watch someone just get checked right into the boards. My Rangers are on track to have a very good season. I am looking for tickets on November 12th when I'm going to be back in New York. Jets, Rangers, I want to go see one of the best teams in hockey go play. There's only one place I'm going to go do that. It is Gametime. And Gametime has a new feature called Gametime Picks that makes getting tickets to see your favorite teams play live even easier. Gametime Picks filters out all the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. The other thing I love about Gametime is the Gametime lowest price guarantee, which means if you find a cheaper ticket on another site, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. You know what that means? Gametime is inherently always going to be the best deal. And all in pricing by toggling that feature, they show you the total up front with no surprise fees at checkout. So take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Gametime Picks. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNBA for $20 off. Download Gametime today. What time is it? Gametime. All right, let's talk a roller coaster of a night for Mikal Bridges, where it kind of varied from him. There were memes making him look like a certain war criminal. I'm not going to mention. Terry Rozier once suggested that particular war criminal should play basketball. I'll leave it at that. To I don't know, like prime Paul George in the second half. He was cooking in the second half after the shot. There was video of him practicing his new like torture release in the first half, where he just like arches it way behind his head. Like I don't. It's like it feels like he's being put on that. Like what was the French? I'm asking a lot out of you out here, Alex. Like was it the French torture device where they'd like stretch you? That's what it feels like.
The torture rack, I think that was called.
There you go, the torture. I was on a mental torture rack watching the shot. It looks like someone just stretching his like alien wingspan behind his head as far as possible. It was awful. He was shooting like that in the first half. In the second half, it felt like he got embarrassed and he was like, all right, screw this. I'm just going to play normally. Finishes somehow 7 for 13. 2 for 7 from three. Obviously, both threes came in the second half. In particular, his third quarter was really good after he missed a technical free throw, which was clearly Tom Thibodeau saying, hey, let's get this guy going. Let's throw him a bone. He missed it, of course. From that point, 5 for 6 from the field, 2 for 3 from three, 12 points in the third quarter, a couple of step back twos, the 2 threes, a 1 foot midi. It was all in garbage time, so you take it with a grain of salt, but you know what? Good to get his confidence up. Good that the shot looks smooth is worth like millions of dollars to the New York Knicks. That was really encouraging. After I was really discouraged by his first half, again, not only in the sense that the shot was broken and it looked like he had a concussion, but even more so that like he couldn't find any other way to contribute, like wasn't attacking the rim, wasn't creating for others. I've already talked about the defense, but Alex, obviously, like overall, I would weirdly say this was a positive game for him because I thought there was a risk that lingered and hopefully it doesn't linger.
Yeah, I'm like feeling good about my overall take when we did the bold predictions the other day, where I was like, he's a pro, he'll figure it out. And luckily in the second half, it seemed that way. And, you know, to my uneducated eye, the thing that seemed to sort of start making it work better was when he took his first like midi or whatever. Like he sort of got rushed into a shot at one point and had to take it from around the free throw line. And I saw that one and I was like, that actually looks really good. Like, just do that again. And then he did that again and it seemed to work. So I almost wonder if he just sort of like awakened something in himself where like, it was like, oh wait, that's how it should feel when I release a shot. Like stop doing this whole thing with the elbow and everything and just, you know, shoot it like normal, like just shoot it fluidly. And then all of a sudden they started going in for him. So I hope that continues for him because like they're going to need his offense clearly after this game. Like Karl-Anthony Towns had his moments, but was not the dominant offensive force that the Knicks, you know, traded for him to be. I don't think. I mean, they did a pretty good job of kind of bottling him up and not letting him get too close to the hoop, which will not do anything to assuage the fears of like Cat isn't physical enough, you know, and to your point, like doesn't make people feel him, you know, like doesn't get a shoulder into someone to go create space. Like he had an early post up that I thought was pretty encouraging where Drew Holiday, who's like a notorious guy to fluster bigs when he switched onto them, you know, Cat had a really nice patient possession against him at one point where he sort of just like got the ball. It was him and Josh sort of working a 2-man game on the side. He gets the ball and then like gets that switch, with Drew, and is sort of working it for a second. Drew's getting kind of like up in his business a little bit, kicks it back out to Hart for like 2 seconds. Hart kicks it back to him, and then he like keeps it way out there. Like, okay, you can't touch it here. Drew Holiday, starts dribbling the ball at a distance from himself, whatever. And then managed to create a really good opportunity that way where he just kind of backed him in, was patient, and then just was far enough under the hoop then at that point that he was able to just sort of turn around and get a nice little hook, extend over him. It looked really pretty. So he had his moments like that, but other moments where it just looked like, like he was just getting swallowed up, whether it was mostly like Al Horford or, whoever they were deploying on him. I think even Xavier Tillman kind of had some moments against him once or twice, like just not the most inspiring offensive game from Cat, even though the counting stats don't look bad. I think they sort of look bad just by virtue of the fact that like there's not that many of them, like only 9 shots for the guy who's supposed to be your number 2 option on offense. Only 2 attempts from 3 throughout the whole game, 12 points overall and a -18, which actually was the best of the starters. But I don't know. I wasn't particularly thrilled with his game and definitely need to see a little more. I just was surprised they didn't run as much activity for him and Brunson. Honestly, like it just seemed like that 2-man game they were trying to like nurture during the preseason and like turn into something. They just completely threw out the window in this game in favor of like subbing Cat out early and then running sets with Jericho Sims or whatever. And it's just, it was a little bizarre to me that they were not leveraging what could have been the thing that I don't know that it would have saved this game, because I don't think anything could have saved this game, but it could have kept it competitive longer, I think, had they been looking a little more aggressively for Brunson and Cat. So I don't know, just a little, I'm not putting any concern levels high, but just something to watch for with how those two play together going forward.
Yeah, I'm definitely with you. I guess, maybe part of the thinking was that the Celtics are one of the few teams in the league that doesn't have to involve a third person, and especially because they started the game with Holiday on Cat, maybe that was intentional to deter that, because then you're just switching Holiday onto Brunson, and obviously, while Brunson can score on Drew Holiday, that's not a mismatch. Holiday's as good of a guard defender as there is on planet Earth. So that might've been part of it. I was disappointed in like Cat, just like once you had that matchup. We saw the exact, it was a little deja vu, Alex, because we saw this last year where the Celtics started off the game with Drew Holiday on Julius Randle, and Drew Holiday totally flustered him. I rarely agree with Shaq and Charles on D&D, who both seem to hate Jalen Brunson, don't have him as like a top 20 player in the NBA. But I agreed with them at halftime when they were showing clips and being like, hey, Cat, you got to like freaking like seal the dude, like bury him under the basket. I know Drew Holiday's physical, but you are 7, 8 inches, 9 inches taller and like 60 pounds heavier. Like bury the guy, get the ball, and force them out of that. Tom Thibodeau, I think, could have helped things by having maybe a little bit of a quicker trigger on Josh Hart and putting Deuce McBride in there, because what made a big difference is like there were times where Cat was trying to drive Drew Holiday and Horford would just rotate over and like either block the shot or contest the shot. It was because Josh Hart was totally unwilling to shoot threes early in this game, which was like another, like, I think, sneaky culprit of the Knicks' quote unquote lack of success on offense, even though they were really efficient overall. But if they were trying to match the Celtics, like it has to go up for Josh. Like, and if Josh is not willing to shoot threes, then I'm sorry, like he can't start games. And that's tough because you need his rebounding and you need his switchability and you need like all the things he brings to the table as a connector. But it's just going to short circuit what, again, should be like maybe the second best offense in basketball if he's not shooting threes and hitting them at a decent clip. So I'm annoyed that still hasn't gotten through to him after last year's playoff run. But like Tibbs just has to drive that home and say like, hey, you're going to play less if those shots aren't going up. He only took 2, even though like the Celtics were basically daring him to shoot. But a little bit of it's on Cat, and Cat just has to be more physical. I thought he got it together, to your point, like as the first quarter went on, early second quarter, like had a nice driving and one hook. What was really disappointing, and again, this is part of the Celtics philosophy, was that he only got up 2 threes. And like, do you just look at the totals on the night? Part of this was Boston just taking 1,000,000 threes late to try to set the record. But on top of the accuracy, Boston was 29-61. The Knicks were 11-30, right? They got up less than half as many threes. And that's what Boston's counting on. The math is just not going to work out. And like part of that's on Brunson to create. part of that's on guys to just like shoot him off the dribble. It was really only Deuce McBride who was like consistently like really, really aggressive shooting 3-pointers. And I guess Mikal Bridges got up 7 eventually. But to me, that was like the reason the Knicks never even had a shot in this game. And it's kind of the biggest thing they have to figure out offensively. Like, how do you take advantage of all this shooting and get comfortable just throwing them up like en masse?
Yeah, I'm with you on Cat. And, I want to just quickly shout out Josh Hart, like, because I didn't really talk about him yet. I know you spoke on him for a sec, but like I thought that he did pretty well for a guy that, if we want to find one more silver lining, a guy that was said, literally said, I'm lost. I don't know what I'm doing right now. Like within the last week, to go out there and shoot 4-6 and 4-4 on anything other than threes, and get 4 boards, 3 assists. Like I thought that he was moving well. I thought that of all the people that seemed to not quite know what they were doing tonight, he did seem to know what he was doing. So perhaps he is now found instead of lost. I just think that he was all in all doing pretty good to facilitate the offense to the best of his ability, trying to kick out the shooters and stuff. I'd be curious to see. I didn't have the time before we recorded this to look up like every pass that he made or whatever, but I'd be curious to see what like his potential assists were tomorrow. Because I think that he probably could have flirted with like 5 or 6 assists in this game if some guys had made shots, just based off my memory. But all in all, I really enjoyed how he played. OG Anunoby, I will say, I'm not buying that the self-creation leap is ever going to happen at this point. I know that was like a point that some people were like OG himself, apparently, if you believe the reports, at the end of his tenure in Toronto, like part of the frustration there was he thought like I could be more of a fulcrum on offense than I am here. And they're treating me as just like a spot up shooter and whatever. And it's like, nah, I think that's it. I think that's your role. I don't feel particularly confident about him creating. Every time he did in this game, it was not fantastic. And then on top of it, he didn't make his threes either. Went 0-4 from deep for all the concerns we had about Bridges going into this game. Like, I don't think OG exactly, I mean, he did okay during preseason, but wasn't exactly like shooting the lights out either. So hopefully this doesn't become a trend and he doesn't start the season cold, which always seems to be the case with someone on the Knicks. There's always one guy you expect to be good that ends up just absolutely being terrible to start the season, whether it was RJ Barrett or Julius Randle or, whatever. Someone always starts off mega cold for this team. So hopefully it's not OG. I guess we'll see, but offensively, not the best time for him. Defensively, he didn't really, much like Mikal, he didn't really stand out to me. He did passable at times, particularly like you had pointed out earlier when they switched him on to Tatum, but all in all, not the most encouraging game for him either. So hopefully a blip rather than a trend.
I thought he was the one guy that the Celtics could not really go one-on-one on, and like a couple of times got some generous bailout calls. I thought he did really good, even in the first half. Like the few possessions he got on Tatum, like on drives, like getting a hand on the basketball and like not really giving an inch, and that I wish we could clone him. I wish we could have 2 of him, because then you could really take care of Jalen Brown and Jason Tatum. And that's the premise of getting Mikal Bridges. And hopefully Bridges gets to that point, but his strength is a difference maker. I've been saying this going back to the preseason, and also again, knocked in the comments for it, but we'll see. Like he does not look as explosive to me as he looked at the end of last year. And it's a little unfair because Alex had that like Indiana game fresh in my mind where he had 28 points in like the first half before pulling his hamstring. And that was the last time we got to see him, at least the healthy version of him, before like the corpse of him came out in Game 7. If we can get more of that guy, I think that could make the difference with the Knicks being a good team and a really, really great team that could potentially compete with Boston in a few months. But final thoughts. This was just night one. You phrased it well. Like we've seen some bad opening nights for the Knicks in the past. The Celtics are just really good, and the gap is really wide, and a lot is going to have to happen for the Knicks to make it up. I don't think it's impossible, but there is a long way to go. Fortunately, just game 1. Anyways, he's Alex. I'm Gavin. We will be back later today with a bonus episode of the Locked On Knicks podcast, because this game, there was just too much to talk about. We wanted to get into the rotation. We wanted to get into a good showing from the rookies. So stay tuned in a little bit for a bonus edition of Locked On Knicks, and then we'll be back in your feeds later with more game recaps and much more coverage to come. Sorry. Thanks. I was going to say, I realized
I'm gonna hit a clean one just because I think that you saying sorry is gonna.
Oh yeah, no, it's okay. I was going to say my mouse was way away from the body, but yeah.
Oh, it's fine.
Yeah.
All right, 3, 2, 1.